Hi, this is Aislinn speaking. Sorry, Tracy, were you about to say something?
I was, first I'm going to say sorry for mispronouncing your name many times. And I'm so happy to have heard you actually say it, so I know what to say. So, Aislinn, I don't know if you saw my message, and I don't like putting people on the spot with this, but I do feel like maybe it's time for another land acknowledgement.
Oh, yeah.
If you're comfortable.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so I will mute myself and step back. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is Aislinn speaking, and I just want to echo the thanks for our last panelist. It's such important history, and I really appreciated like a little bit of a peek into the behind the scenes of that too. And hi, Carmen.
Hi.
Yeah, we can start with like a self-description and land acknowledgement. Does that sound good?
For sure. Yeah.
I'll go ahead. Yeah,
okay.
I'm Aislinn Thomas, and you may have heard me do this already, so I apologize if you have. But I'm a white cis woman and in my 30s, my late 30s, and I use she or they pronouns. I'm on the lower end of the weight spectrum. I have short, kind of poofy hair, auburn hair. And I'm wearing a corduroy puffy vest, burgundy puffy vest, and a yellow scarf with white polka dots. And behind me is just a light gray wall. And I'm really grateful to be joining you from Peace and Friendship Treaty territory on Unama'ki, or Cape Breton Island. And Unama'ki is just one small part of Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded land of the Mi'kmaq, which is most of a good part of the Maritimes. And I'm just very grateful and humbled to be here and grateful for this space with you. I'll pass the torch to you, Carmen.
Thanks, Aislinn. Yes, it's Carmen speaking here. I'm calling in from the unceded and occupied territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. My grandparents emigrated here, and I'm an uninvited guest on this land, so it's a privilege to be able to gather here and talk to you today about accessibility, disability justice, disability culture. I use he, him, his pronouns. I describe myself as a non-visual artist. I don't use words like blind to describe myself because I feel like they privilege visual experience, but I am a non-visual artist. I also, in socially safe conditions, I share more about my severe chronic pain condition. Today, I'll just leave it at that. I've experienced severe chronic pain since childhood. I'm talking to you from my bedroom right now. This is where I've been taking Zoom calls lately, on this chair that's kind of comfortable for me. I'm wearing this like deep, like kind of browny, rusty, mustardy shirt and dark blue pants. My skin is olive colored and I have black hair, black beard, get my olive skin from my mom. And I guess I will leave it there. You actually can see some of my hat collection behind me, and I'm also wearing a hat, which I usually am. I have many hats hidden throughout this house. So I'm so glad to be here and to be in conversation with Aislinn. And this has just been a very powerful and just affirming stream that I've been able to catch. So thank you for sharing space here.
Yeah, and this is Aislinn speaking. I echo that. It felt like such a nourishing space. I've said that many times, but despite the sometimes very heavy content around C7 and the history that's led us here, and yeah, Carmen, I know we had talked about reading an essay written by Mia Mingus, and you very kindly allowed me to go ahead and read that yesterday. And but I thought we could, if you like, still talk about it, and I could even read a couple excerpts to get us started, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think some excerpts would be great in case there's folks that didn't catch it yesterday. That would be awesome.
Yeah, okay, great. I'm happy to do that. And so I'll just say again that this text is by Mia Mingus, and her name is spelled Miamingus. And if you're not familiar with her work, she's amazing. She's a Bay Area disability justice activist, and her blog has been just such an amazing resource. It's leaving evidence .wordpress.com. And sorry, I had some notes here, so I'm gonna go back to them. Oh yeah, and I just like to situate myself like as a grateful student of disability justice. I would like to and endeavor to be an accomplice, but it's not a community I'm directly connected to, so that feels important to say that. Just very indebted to the wisdom and ethics of disability justice. But let's see. So in the essay, like Mia Mingus begins by talking about how there are many kinds of intimacy. She says, for example, there's physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, intellectual, political, familial, or sexual intimacy. But then she goes on to name, like to have a term for what she feels as a disabled person, what like kind of intimacy she experiences. And so she's coined this term access intimacy. And so a lot of the essay is kind of her reflections on the different ways that she feels access intimacy, how sometimes it's kind of hard won, at other times it can kind of magically present itself. And but she's only kind of recently just had this term and been able to name it, and it becomes like kind of easier to think and feel through. And here is kind of more of a definition from partway through the essay. Quote, access intimacy is that elusive, hard to describe feeling when someone else, quote, gets your access needs. The kind of eerie comfort that your disabled self feels with someone on a purely access level. Sometimes it can happen with complete strangers, disabled or not, or sometimes it can be built over years. It can also be the way your body relaxes and opens up with someone when all your access needs are being met. It is not dependent on someone having a political understanding of disability, ableism, or access. Some of the people I have experienced the deepest access intimacy with, especially able-bodied people, have had no education or exposure to a political understanding of disability. So that's the end of the quote. And Carmen, is there a specific part that speaks to you that you'd like me to look for here, or what do you think?
I feel like I just love this text because it talks about accessibility as being something that doesn't rely on compliance, that's not practiced through, policy recommendations for a basic level of care. It really allows us to be more intentional, build an intentional practice of care, and that really is really what draws me to this, as well as Mia Mingus's idea of access is love as well. Does that kind of bring you anywhere, Aislinn, that you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, it brings me to, I was just scrolling. I kind of pasted this in a document and made it large text for myself, and was kind of just scrolling as you were talking there, and I absolutely, and she does talk about, I'll read this paragraph because I think it really underscores what you're saying, Carmen. Quote, access intimacy is not just the action of access or helping someone, in quotes. We have all experienced access that has left us feeling like a burden, violated, or just plain shitty. Many of us have experienced obligatory access where there is no intimacy, just a stoic counting down of the seconds until it's over. this is not access intimacy. There have been numerous relationships in my life where I have loved people very deeply, but never felt safe with them around my access. So many relationships where I knew I could only ask for or share so much without getting snapped at, chided, or being punished. Yeah, that was the end of the quote. Further down, she talks about how it's not charity, it's not resentful, in my own words, it's not a tit for tat. And yeah, it's certainly not done because you feel like you have to. Yeah.
It just makes me think about, like, in my own experience, how accessibility and good kind of like, affirming accessibility, where I can, be recognized, and my needs, and I can define those, and I have agency, really have been experiences that come through like making close relationships with people that are based in trust. And that's not the scenario that I'm in when I end up in the emergency room, which is like, multiple time a year occurrence for me. So it really does, and I do rely on that kind of medical intervention and support when I need it. But I'm always thinking about, how do I build that, like hold a space around for myself and for others, where I can, I can maintain my agency and decision-making power. I describe in my own art practice accessibility as a measure of agency. It determined by like the social, cultural, or political conditions at any given time. Based on the people in the room, what their politics are, how the culture of that space could be described, and the social dynamics of it. So yeah, accessibility, I think, is more dynamic than a set of, as it was proposed, as, and how we usually engage the topic through, compliance with policy or law. It really is, I think, it's the kind of accessibility that I want to experience centers, it's reciprocal. It's a reciprocal relationship. It is accountable, and it allows me to hold my dignity. So that's the kind of care that, and the culture of care that I want to live in, and I think that's really the kind of that kind of experience is really available through disability culture, and through the disability-led spaces, the grassroots spaces that I participated in. So I think this access intimacy is something I experience most with other disabled people in community, especially around spaces that like understand what they're doing as disability justice.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just the very kind of like minimum thing of like recognizing that each person is the best expert on their own needs. Like I think that that's something that mainstream culture has not fully grasped in my limited experience, or I don't know if I need to qualify my experience or not, but it seems like such a basic thing. And I don't know, there's so much that you touched on there, Carmen, and I don't know how much you want to talk about medical ableism, but I feel like it's so pertinent to the discussion about Bill C7, because like listening to this and at testimonies, so many people, like person after person, shared about being in the hospital and seeking medical care and being forced to sign a do not resuscitate order, or having MAID pushed as a treatment option. And yet I think, like, I don't know, the only way I can explain it is that senators maybe saw these things as like fringe cases. And I know for myself, I have been fortunate not to have a DNR, like someone tried to force a DNR on me, but I have been really afraid to go to the hospital for like since before the pandemic, and because of some really traumatic experiences that happened. And now we're in this global pandemic where we have blatantly discriminatory triage protocols and everything. And I'm just not sure how, I think I find it discouraging that a lot of politicians resort to this idea that we need to trust the medical system when it's so deeply flawed. And we're both white folks, you know, we don't have the, like, it's so often deadly, like medical racism is so often deadly, and people who are experiencing the intersection of that, and people experiencing transphobia in the medical system is just amplified so much more. But yeah.
It really, yeah. And for myself, like my experience with the medical system, like I have medical trauma since childhood, and I continue to be re-traumatized in medical institutions. And, you know, I don't, you know, I've not had a DNR push on me either, but I am in a situation usually when I'm seeking assistance, you know, and medical intervention when I'm completely debilitated and relying on others for my support and my care. And I've been, you know, denied care, and it's been, you know, questioned and yeah, like the validity of my need as well. And I know that I have a lot of privilege within that system. So I too have been resisted. I mean, before the pandemic, for maybe 2 or so years, did not go to the hospital when I was in crisis. And I tried to care for myself at home with the support of my family and my partner and friends. So and it's not an ideal scenario to be in, as caring as my friends and family are. I just don't see that care extend into the medical institution. And it really is, I mean, it is the, like, being medicalized is the thing that I have resisted ever since I started, you know, identifying as a disabled person. And I think the medical system is a carceral system, and it definitely has levels of authority that, you know, where someone's like lived experience and truth has to be validated by someone with more authority. And, you know, I don't have to talk too much about carceral ableism, because I think it's been covered here. And but I do, even in my experience with the privilege that I hold within the, you know, as you know, within the medical context, I feel that levels of authority and the fact that space is just not easily accessible to me. And you know, we have healthcare here. We you know, I have lived in the States as well, and it's a lot worse there. And I moved back to Vancouver because I felt like I was at risk there, and I might not make it if I stayed there. So it's like, yeah, it's really hard to build trust within an institution where that is violent, that causes harm, that has that harm built into it from its inception. Yeah.
Yeah, and although we have so much more available to us here through publicly funded healthcare in Canada versus the United States, there's still like some really huge glaring gaps. And if you're poor or not affluent, like not middle class, like, and you have a condition that where you're not going to get your needs met in like through things that are covered by provincial healthcare, then it's really hard, and the costs can pile up, and no one gets like dental care or eye care covered. And anyhow, there's a lot of gaps, even with the discrimination aside. But sorry, Carmen.
Oh, I mean, like I'm right now requiring two pretty serious pain treatments that I can't get outside of a private pay situation. And I will have to wait till the end of the summer to access a clinic, or the early fall to access a clinic that I can get those done at no cost. And, you know, beyond that, the clinic where I can get it done now for cost doesn't have safe protocols for COVID. So, you know, I will die if I get COVID, and I can't risk going there, even for a treatment. But aside from this, like this is why I think, you know, disability justice is, it really excites me as like specifically not a rights-based movement. You know, something, a movement that recognizes that for some and for many, you know, rights are fragile, and you know, groups with, you know, little political power, but also, you know, what it really makes room for is, and I think what is disability justice is at its core is it's a mutual aid effort, where, you know, led by those most impacted, and you know, that the aim is to build capacity for care that people would not have otherwise. You know, disabled folks building capacity for care, you know, for and with other disabled folks, and you know, for you know, support, safety, care that they wouldn't have on account of governmental failure, on account of the violence of policing and ableism in the medical system. So, you know, we do have the ability to care for each other and to, you know, gather resources together. And I think this moment of COVID and the uprising for Black lives has been, and you know, really shown us that, like, you know, we do in times of crisis come together as disabled communities do for their own survival, and have been for forever. In order to survive, we come together, and we can care for each other. And I think, you know, it really is empowering and just affirming to see the various care networks and support structures that have emerged, you know, where disabled folks are supporting each other, and really prioritizing care for those who have you know, are experience systemic inequality in care. You know, people who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, within the disability community. And yeah, folk like we were talking about. But yeah, that's, I guess, what just really excites me about disability justice and its potential as like a, you know, that's kind of like the future that I want to live in, is an interdependent future where we are, you know, connect. We are connecting around our own care needs, and addressing those together.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I really was, and I kind of wrote down this note a little bit earlier. It's really interesting, like a lot of, so Bill C7 has brought together a lot of disability rights activists and community. And I've been like trying to, as a student of disability justice, and trying to, yeah, just what is the relationship like, because I feel like Bill C7 stands to really actively harm a lot of people, like end lives. And it stands, like, already made has been ending the lives of disabled people who would prefer to live and make it publicly known that they want to live, but are denied the access support they need to live outside of institutions that are just so oppressive. And anyhow, and so people, we've lost disabled kin through MAID already, and will only stand to lose more. And so is it a two-pronged approach? Like, I often think about disability rights and disability justice as like a first wave and second wave, like just trying to conceptualize things for myself, but we have a bit of an overlapping of waves, it seems. And like, in some ways I think about the standing up against C7 is a way to reduce harms. Like, I heard, I think I referenced this earlier, but it's online, death by coercion, and I think Disability Justice Network of Ontario is hosting that on their YouTube channel. And Cyrus Ware was saying at the end how like his takeaway is that, well, you know, well, we've never been able to depend on the state to take care of us, and we shouldn't now. And like we're gonna build this wonderful future together, led by BIPOC and trans and queer disabled folks. And I really love his vision. And at the same time, I'm just curious how you kind of think about that relationship, Carmen.
Yeah, I share that hopefulness that Cyrus was referring to. Like I feel like, you know, we're building with these kinds of actions, with organizing in the disability justice sort of ways, and just through like participating in disability culture. Like I think that is the counterpoint to the violence that we're experiencing right now is disability culture. And I think it's really hard. I think people are not going to care about or love disability unless they understand it as a culture. And I think that's why I'm an artist, is to really you know, try to capture people's imagination and thinking, and really have us like collectively envision the futures that we want to live in. And I think, you know, those, like for me, like what I experience in disability led spaces is like kind of like it's prefiguring you know, this space that there might not be a context for currently, but it is alive and is thriving within, you know, these moments within these spaces of disability that are collectively held around these principles of disability justice, of, you know, the kinds of definitions of care that we've been talking about. So I think that, yeah, like whatever achieves like a you know, a promoting of or a representation of disability culture is going, I mean, that's for me the exciting part of being part of the wider disability community and being involved in the work I'm in, is that I'm involved in what disability culture is. And I think yeah, I don't know what else to say on that, but like I think that that's the counterpoint to the violence and the harm.
It's like I may be I may be just not very optimistic, but like I think we talked about this before. Like I get really excited about what you're saying, and at the same time, like I also see, I don't know, like if this is accurate or not. I was gonna say that I see disability culture being co-opted. Like there's this
Mm-hmm.
institution, like an art gallery, and I was asked to do this little like thing, this little video, and I saw that I had actually really terrible time even just getting in the door there before COVID. Like I don't know if it's open now, but and yeah, but they have on their website, there's like, we believe that every institution should model care and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, what? Like, anyhow, yeah, I don't know what you think about that.
Well, yeah, it is being co-opted in terrible ways for sure. But, you know, like grounding, I mean, I think if you do kind of work within the principles of disability justice, like you will be involved in, you know, organizing that centers the most marginalized, that and the most impacted, and you will be you know, right, you'll be I too, like, you know, it is devastating. It is so heavy and yeah, like it's hard. It's draining to hear testimony of people who suffered, and myself. Like you know, I many of my friends, my you know, people I care about, who are disabled, you know, not being able to be their whole selves, or you know, not being able to imagine bright futures for themselves. Um, I mean, I think though that, yeah, like what the way that I get through not and keep being hopeful, I think is just seeing and experiencing the love that I experience within disability community. And I'm held by other disabled people. I'm held by the people that I know are working on other parts of the same projects that I'm involved in that I may not even know yet, that are on the other side of the world. And that just keeps me like feeling like, I need to keep going and keep organizing, keep doing this work, knowing that there's others out there doing it too, and they're do it until they can't anymore. And I don't know what else to say about that. I'm devastated too, but and I'm scared, but especially because the value of lives are I mean, they're being devalued, invalidated. And yeah, but I think the way that we start centering, we need to center the most impacted, and we need to let them take leadership within our communities. And that's the only way that we're going to like have a movement. I think we do have a lot of potential. Like we have a lot of people power. We're like the largest equity seeking group, people with disabilities. If we banded together across disabilities and experiences, and we are a super intersectional group. And I think there's a lot of potential in what we can do as a group. And I think this stream is testament to that, and what disability culture is.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of different things come to mind, but you're talking about, all these people all over the world, all and also like where you find love and where you are held. And I do think about who is left out, and it can be very isolating, being disabled. And I'm reminded of Stacy Milburn, who talked about how do we welcome people like the newly disabled? How do we welcome them into community? How do we find them? I know, like for me, I always I feel pretty in my day to day. I feel pretty isolated, and I'm very tethered to home. Like I will be after the pandemic. I was before. Anyhow, it's I know how good it feels when I can and do connect, and how it felt really when I wasn't very connected to other disabled people. And yeah, I just have a real heart for people who may be left out of the conversation, too, out of the community. Yeah. And
Yeah, we need everybody. We need everybody. Like I think that's why that death by coercion panel was so important as part of this discussion. And like it really was addressing the systemic inequalities, and how like those who are Black, Indigenous, and folks of color, and poor, and folks who who for these kinds of protocols, and people who are incarcerated too, are more impacted by this legislation. So I think we need to start organizing, and just this, I mean, like disability justice needs to be the new kind of standard for how we talk about like our work and our and accessibility, I think too. Like I think that I don't know if I can go back to thinking of compliance as like the way that we address accessibility after the pandemic and the uprising for Black lives. Like it has to be disability justice centered accessibility from now on.
yeah. Yeah. I don't know how you feel about this, Carmen, but I was wondering if you want to like transition to talking a bit about like being disabled as a political identity, and what that means, and how you arrived there. And I do actually I don't have to do this right now, but I was thinking about this and was reminded of a really great text on that Yo-Yo Lin and Kiki Brown wrote for their rotations group. Have you read that by chance?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. Let me pull it up because I think it's like it really talks about how we don't all have equal access to disabled identity and
Mhm.
right here. Okay. So this is on it's rotations.dance. That's the website. Sorry, www.rotations.dance. And it says, if you scroll down, there's a section that says on disability. And they say that we acknowledge the fluid nature of disability, that disability is not a binary, it cannot fit into a yes or no checkbox. We acknowledge that disability identity language helps bring us together, yet also exists as a barrier for many, particularly BIPOC and immigrant communities who do not use disability identity language. We welcome anyone who holds a relationship with illness/disability, which includes those who are unsure about their disability status.
Yeah, the yeah, that I'm just trying to think of like how I encountered, like how I started identifying as disabled. And I think it was when I learned about the social model of disability, like, and just heard this description of, okay, what's disabling you is external, it's social, it's cultural, it's political, it's about your your agency and your ability to, yeah, make decisions about your life, your ability to participate in public life. And for me, that really shifted the weight of like I was like, okay, if these conditions are external, I can surely shift them somehow, or at least address them as something there. Or it's not like I'm not flawed inherently. I'm not. I mean, not that I thought that I had before I learned about the social model, but like, yeah, like it just really shifted some dynamic for me where I was able to think of these, the ways that I'm disabled as external and maybe a reflection of where society or culture was at, and that I needed to with my work in some way shift that or push that culture forward in some ways around, ideas of that bodies are all sorts of ways, and people experience the world, in a multitude of ways that are valid, and so yeah, but I think shortly after I learned about the social model, I started self-defining. Like I started calling myself a non-visual learner first, and then non-visual artist, and I only use that term even just to signal out my relationship or describe my relationship um, to the visual world, to visual culture. I don't think I need to say that all the time if I'm in community with people, because they see me using my cane to feel things, and they understand that I navigate my surroundings with my non-visual senses. But ever since I started using a cane, I've modified it too, and I've felt positioned by the way that the standard issue white cane kind of like is connected to this institution, that really has kind of yeah, specific ideas of what it means. Like I always felt like when my first point of contact around support when I started using a white cane was the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, and I really didn't feel comfortable with the way that I was being told to, you have to adopt these skills so you can be independent and then find your way back into your community. Like I already had connections within my community, and I already had, like, I didn't need to learn visual etiquette, like, which, I literally people, I was involved with this youth program at one point where there was a kid who had two prosthetic eyes who's being told to look at people when he was talking to them. Like it was not congruent with people's bodies, people's lived experiences and their sensory realities. So I felt that was really limiting. And I feel like, the more I was like, when I started addressing my access through my creative practice, my socially engaged practice, and this, bled into organizing in certain ways, like through the arts and through the communities that I'm part of, I felt like really like liberated to self-define and continue to define my experience. And I think that is kind of how I came to a really, practice in the way that I do around, the kinds of accessibility or care that I want to make space for, and also why I'm in alignment with disability justice as a movement and a set of principles.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that. For myself, yeah, it's just interesting to think about, like, as I've shared earlier, I have an acquired disability. I mean, I have a lot going on, but what kind of catapulted me into self-defining as disabled, as you put it, was after a brain injury. And what was kind of interesting about that experience is that initially I was told that this is likely a temporary thing, and I didn't feel comfortable describing myself as disabled. I knew a lot of people who were disabled from birth, and I didn't really think that I qualified. And then, I mean, that was almost 7 years ago. And but even actually what happened, I think that I probably first started using the language of access and accommodation because about a year in, like, I had my injury was while I was in school, and I took a year off, and was in bed for most of that time, and like couldn't read, and it was pretty intense. But where am I going with this? I decided to go back, and navigating that institution required my like needing to use certain language and stuff. But now that I think of it, like actually years before, because this was, sorry, when I talk about my brain injury, that was during my master's degree, and I'm very lucky to be like have more than one degree. But when I was in my undergrad, I also used the, like, they called it the Office of Students with Disabilities, but I felt like I didn't really identify as disabled. I just had an illness. And anyhow, it took me a while. I had to sort of start to feel like, okay, this maybe isn't going away before I felt that I could use that language of being disabled. And but it's actually something I'm really grateful for. Although I do want to say, like, there's this sense of my my family doesn't know that I'm disabled. Like, they don't know that I use that language. And like, as you know, Carmen, like, I have a strained relationship with my immediate family. I'm not in touch with them now, but they're very they think if I had a different attitude, I wouldn't be disabled, and I must want to be. I mean, they don't use the word disabled, but I must want to be sick, or else I wouldn't be sick. Like, it's very strange way of thinking, but there, I do have like a sense of shame in certain contexts, and my family is one of them, and the medical system is another. Even though, like, you would think that using the language of disability and access would be a helpful thing in navigating that system, but I haven't found it to be, in my experience so far at least. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's Yeah, I don't know where I want to go with that, but I feel the same way. Like as much language as I could bring into that system, the medical system, like it doesn't get you far. Um, you can, yeah, and that's I guess that's why I feel like developing protocols for like care and safety within community is just like we can self-determine as a community of disabled folks, multiply marginalized folks. Um, and yeah, that's the hope, is that we can keep like, building on what that definition of accessibility is and what care is and could be, what support could be, what like the, because like I think with the accommodation model for accessibility, it really is a container for your participation. It's already been defined. Your participation has been defined through, through and from the perspective of people without lived experience. So, this is the, I think of accommodations as kind of like a temporary bridge to participation in a system that wasn't built with the user in mind. So, it's really a way to retrofit access and accommodation. I really want access that grows from the grassroots. I want it to be able to, be something that destabilizes these rigid systems, yeah, and invalidates them for how restrictive they are and how limiting they are.
Yes. Yes, please. Actually, I was reading another text by Mia Mingus recently. I think you may have referenced it to Carmen, and I think it's called Disability Justice is Simply Another Term for Love. And in it, she uses the term liberatory access, and she talks about how she doesn't want a seat at the table. She wants to build something more magnificent than a table. And
Mm-hmm.
I just love that. Yeah.
Yeah, let's build something better than a table. Let's like just re-envision the world so it can include, and not, no, like around our terms, around the demands and desires of the disabled body, versus adopting ableist concepts of normalcy and perpetuating those through the way we organize our social spaces, our communities, the ways buildings are designed. Let's design those. Let's re-envision our worlds around the demands and desires of the disabled body.
Yeah, for sure. Please.
How are we doing on time?
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes, 10, 11 minutes left.
Would it be okay if I introed the score that I want, the meditation that I wanted to share?
Please do.
Yeah.
Please do.
Okay, cool. So, Aislinn and I were going to conclude today with a little a performance score that I wrote in collaboration with an animator that I work with named Heather Kai Smith. It's called Score for a Temporary Collectively Held Space. And in 2015, I wrote this manifesto called Open Access, and it was just really a statement that I wrote for myself to describe the kind of accessibility that I want to enliven with my work, and what I want accessibility to be. So if you have a chance, I think you could probably find it online. It's called Open Access, and it's just 5 principles. And so this performance score that Aislinn's going to read is kind of, it references open access, and it includes one of its, a statement from it as well. This score actually is meant to be considered in relation to a sculptural work that me and Heather it's kind of like this performance object that we made together, which is a large play parachute. So like the ones that you would experience in grade school, where you would like kind of like lift them up and then it catches there and then you go under them. And with this parachute, it says, so, you know, if you could imagine like about 12 people around this parachute, when it catches the air and you look up, there's this slogan that's part of the open access manifesto, and it says, interdependence is central to the radical restructuring of power. And so I'll leave you with that. And so this is the performance score to activate that parachute. And it's kind of like a meditation. So I'd like to just, if you invite you to all close your eyes and find some comfort. And this is being read by Aislinn Thomas.
Score for a temporary, collectively held space. 1. While this invitation is meant for a group of 12 or less, the practice described can accommodate any number of participants. 2. Like Open Access 2015, the practice acknowledges a continuum of embodiments, identities, realities, and learning styles. It operates under the premise that interdependence is central to the radical restructuring of power. 3. The practice may be adopted to suit the needs of those involved. 4. A bedsheet can be used in lieu of a parachute. If a bedsheet is not available, the following instructions may be read as a meditation. With a group, find a meeting point. The purpose of the meeting, whether to find common ground or cause a disruption, may change with the practice. The location for the meeting should support what the group intends to achieve. If the space doesn't exist, model the characteristics of the space as part of the practice. Once those with a desire to participate are present, unwrap the parcel. An animated circle divided by red spokes, not a wheel, not as uniformly round. The red line, a guiding string through a pattern of light, material, blood vessel, flittering edges, recall wildfire, provisions, a series of white tents. Now assess the material as if rendering care. Locate the nylon handles, and once you have a grip, pull them until the circle opens. While seated on the ground, practice sending up a wave to the other side of the circle by slowly lifting up, then sharply pulling down. Take turns sending waves to each other until the group is ready to transition. Try increasing the frequency until the waves reach a crescendo, then dissipate. While standing, coordinate with others and slowly lift the parachute so it becomes a canopy, lung, suspended dandelion seed. As it falls, consider the desires that you brought to this circle. Then, together, lift them up. Continue to hold space for each other until the group is ready to resolve the space. To close the practice, consider each other. You and the communities you belong to are vital, the magnetism that brought you together, a form of access intimacy.
Thank you. Thanks, Aislinn.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Carmen. I enjoyed reading that. and visualizing it.
Well, that's I feel good about ending there. Do you have anything to add before we sign off?
No, I mean, just a big thank you. I see there's 4 minutes left, but I'll check in with the host to if the next folks are here and ready.
Yeah, it's Tracy here. And thank you for all that amazing guidance at the beginning on how to describe myself visually. I'm going to give it a shot here. So I'm a 51-year-old white woman. I am overweight. I am wearing black headphones. I have red hair with lots of gray at the front right now from, pandemic hair. And mostly you just see my face in the screen, and there's a very generic painting in the background of an ocean scene and kind of a corner of another painting in my bed frame, which you wouldn't know was a bed frame if you didn't know, but I'm sure we're all in various spaces in our houses as we manage through this. So hopefully that was not bad, and I'm really going to try and incorporate that in the future. So, that was hugely appreciated. I also really, the description of, being non-visual and a user of different senses also is really something I'm going to take away. So thank you for that. And I mean, I'm not to, take away from everything that you said in the last hour, which has been absolutely incredible. But I just, wanted to talk about my own learning there, I guess. It was really helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. And thank you for having us today and sharing this space with us. I really appreciate being part of this, and I've just been watching and just really appreciating everybody who showed up for this.
All right, well, I guess we're going to transition over to the next group. And so I will say goodbye, Aislinn and Carmen, and thank you both so much for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, Carmen.
Bye.